Okay, guys, this video is going to talk about how to make note cards for your research project and Noodle tools. The note card taking system for a research project is fairly old school. It's been around for probably 20, 30 years. Um, and pretty much what you used to do with it was have a stack of 3 by 5 note cards sitting next to you when you're doing your research, either sitting in front of your computer or in front of a stack of books in a library or whatever. And as you're combing through your sources, if you came across a piece of information, you would write that piece of information on a note card. And then if you came across a piece of another key piece of information, you'd write that information on another note card, and you would just systematically go through all of your sources and form your research based on these note cards. And the reason why the note cards were used was because it was easy to put those note cards into different piles. To help you formulate your arguments. So instead of having all of your information just written out into a notebook, you would have these different smaller piles of related note cards so you can see the larger arguments that you're trying to make take place. Now, what Noodle Tools has done is given us the same template. It's just web-based. It's an internet-based program, and I think that you might actually really like this for note-taking purposes. So here I am in my project, right, that I've made, and we talked before about how to put sources into Noodle Tools. This was the source that I used for the annotated bibliography. I also added a couple more sources that I came across, just so you can kind of see how you can create just a list of sources very easily in Noodle Tools. And then right next to it, this source tab, you have this tab called Notecards, and this is kind of like the what they call like a table view. And so you can see that I've already made a couple of note cards from other sources. You can see that you can manage the piles, you can print them off. You can see this even larger situation where you can kind of see I can move this around and center my note cards. You can imagine you can have a whole bunch of note cards all throughout this space that you see in front of you, right? But let's say we wanted to make a new note card. And so if I go over here and I click on this little green new button, it brings up the note card, and you'll see this little window appear. And there's any number of things that you can do, like you can title the note card by maybe since the article I'm going to be using is from CNN and it deals with the Texas shutdown. So maybe that's how I label it to myself on a quick look what this note card is coming from. And then I can actually choose my source, right? And you can imagine that I have a whole bunch of sources in here, let's say, and I can choose which one it's coming from. And I think this is really helpful because we really want to keep track of where our note cards are coming from. I think that that's one of the major parts of the research process is making sure we're keeping track of like, okay, this piece of information came from this source, this statistic came from this other source, this expert testimony came from this court case. And so you've got everything connected to what source it came from. So I've got my basic situation down where I'm labeling this note card from what source it came from. And then down here, I can provide a direct quotation. Okay, and so if I go back over here to my source that I'm going to be pulling my information from, again, this is just basically an article talking about how Texas has shut down certain aspects of its economy because of the recent COVID spread. And let's say I wanted to focus on this piece of information right here. Okay. So what this basically is talking about is how the bars can remain open for delivery and takeout only. Restaurants can only operate under half capacity, 50% capacity for dining in. Rafting and tubing businesses must close. So tourist-based businesses must close down. And so I find this piece of information really valuable. Let's say I want to focus on what the economic effect of COVID has been, and I want to use this example from Texas to support my position. So I highlight the entire thing, I copy it, and I paste it into this area. Now it's going to give me this weird little other option because of my browser security settings. I just got to repaste it again and then click OK, and then my direct quotation appears right there. So that's like the directly quoted material from the source. And then what I can do over here is paraphrase it because again, as we had talked about in earlier papers, you don't want to overuse direct quotations. You want to be able to summarize sources. You want to be able to paraphrase certain parts of the sources, and this is where you can do that. So you can say right here a quick paraphrase being under Governor Abbott's new order, bars are only open for delivery and takeouts. Restaurants can stay open at half capacity, and tourist-based businesses must shut down. A real basic paraphrase of this direct quotation. So now I've got a direct quotation that I might be able to use in my paper. I've got a paraphrase that I might be able to use in my paper. And then there's one other option here where I can put in my own thoughts, right? It's my own thoughts, like maybe, this has to do with Texas, but what about other states, right? Because it isn't only Texas that is having this issue. Maybe consider Florida, something like that maybe prompts me to think about this information, maybe in relation to other states and whatever they're experiencing. But in any case, what I've done is I've taken a piece of information from the source and I put it into this note card, and I can save it and close it, and now I have myself a note card. Okay, and so here's what I want you to understand is that you make a note card for one piece of information from your source. So if I go back to this source, and let's say I'm reading another part of it, and I'm like, this is really interesting, right? Uh, I want to make a new note card for that piece of information, right? So I can copy that and make an entire new note card over here, Noodle tools. And so you can have easily multiple note cards from the same source. By no means are you restricted to using your source like once for your note cards. You can have as many note cards as you want for each source. But the key to making the note cards work is that you're only putting one piece of information on each note card. So this right here, this highlighted information is nationwide. It has nothing to do with Texas's order about what restaurants and bars and tourist-based businesses can do. This is a nationwide piece of data that maybe I would use in another part of my paper, right? And so the key to note cards is you want one piece of information on each note card, and you can have as many note cards as you want for each source. So that's pretty much the process, is that as you are sitting down and you're going through your sources, whatever comes out at you that you think is valuable, something that supports your argument, something that provides information about something you didn't know about, something that provides statistical data for some aspect of your arguments, you stop, you copy it, you paste it into the note card, and then by the time you're done, you might have several dozen note cards all throughout this open area. Okay, and so that's how we do the note card note-taking system. Now, going back to what I was saying earlier, the real value in this is your ability to drag and form new piles of information. Okay, so let's say I wanted to create a pile. Okay, so let's create a new pile here. Okay, and this new pile is going to be Texas restrictions, because I've found through these various sources some more information about what Texas has done to restrict businesses to help out with the COVID issue, and I click submit. Okay, and so I pull it over here. And so now I have and you just see how it kind of looks differently than these other note cards. So then now what I can do is I can pull these note cards into that pile. So now these related note cards and information coming from these other sources can now be pulled into the same pile. And if I click on the pile and expand it, I can see that I've got these different note cards. Okay, so this note card right here talks about how bars may remain open for delivery and takeout. This note card focuses on how tourist-friendly businesses need to shut down. And then this note card from a third source talks about how he's scaling restaurants back to half capacity. And so what I found is three different sources, right? Three different sources that are all talking about what's going on in Texas. And they all have a common link, which is talking about what Texas has done to stop the spread of COVID. And so what I've done is I've created a pile and I've pulled those note cards together into these piles. And that helps me organize my research, because this is one of the hardest things to do with a research paper is keep track of all of the information that you encounter in all of these sources. Okay, and so this is why we developed the note card system, is because we can easily move this information around into different piles of connected ideas. So again, in this case, I have a pile called Texas restrictions, and I have information from three different sources that talk about that. So now what I've done is created a synthesis, right? Remember how we talked about synthesis of information from three different sources talking about this one idea about what Texas is doing to restrict the flow of COVID. Okay, so this is the real value in the note card system, is it makes it easy for you to pull information around and connect information into different piles and show connections between your various sources that you have. And so by the time you're done, you might have several different piles here. And again, I mean, I don't know what you're doing your paper on, but it could be Texas restrictions. Maybe you have another one talking about Florida. Maybe you have another one talking about nationwide restrictions. Maybe you have one talking about Arizona, right? Because we're all kind of struggling with this right now. So that's the way that you can organize your information in a really easy way, is by using these note cards. And again, Noodle Tools does it really easy for you. And so for this research project, you want to look at how many note cards you need, and do so. And this should be an ongoing process. This should not be something you wait until the very last minute. This should be something where when you're sitting down to research and you're looking through your sources, you also have Noodle Tools open as well. And so that when you come across a piece of information on this article you're reading, you can easily make a note card into Noodle Tools and connect it to a source that it came from, and then just seamlessly take notes as you're going through your sources. Again, you don't want to do this at the very end. It makes it very time consuming and makes it difficult. So this should be something that you do as you research, as you go through the process. So this video talks about how to make note cards on Noodle Tools. Again, it's a great organizational tool. By the time you're done, you should have hopefully various piles of related note card information to give you a rough organizational look at your paper. It may not be as refined as an actual outline, but it gives you an idea of how your paper's taking form. So that's the real value in doing this. So again, in this part of the research project, you're going to make these note cards, you're going to make them in Noodle Tools, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into your Noodle Tools account and check your note cards from there, because you shared your project with me. And if you have any questions with this, please let me know.